Hello, everyone, and welcome to Café New Canadians, a virtual talk show brought to you by New Canadians TV network. In this session of Café New Canadians, we will be talking all about parenting in Canada and discussing resources with you, support services available, and children's as well as parents' rights. My name is Shruti Dargan. I will be moderating this panel discussion, and I'm pleased to welcome three guests who will be joining us to share their tips and insights. We have with us Larisa Rebrova. She's an outreach counselor, support outreach counselor at Calgary Immigrant Women's Association. We also have Valerie Williams, who is a parent educator at Family Education Center. And we have with us Ibukunoluwa Agbanimu, who's a communication strategist as well as a content creator who has an Instagram page by the name The Ottawa Mom. Our panelists and me are covering some provinces in Canada, largely Alberta, Ontario, but we're hoping that in the audience, I just saw that there's some people joining us from Alberta as well and other places. So we hope to share advice with you irrespective of where you are and have a wonderful session with you. Just before we get started with the panelists, let me remind that we will also be taking questions that the audience has for the panelists. So if you're joining us here on Zoom, please use the Q&A button to type your questions, or you could share in the chat box if you're joining us on YouTube, where we're live streaming this webinar with this chat as well. So with that, a very warm welcome again to our panelists. Let's get started with a round of introductions, just so our audience can learn a bit about you, your background, your expertise, or what you wish to share with them. Let's get started with Larisa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Larisa Rebrova. Well, I'm an immigrant from Russia, and I've been in Canada for 17 years. Previously, I was living in Argentina, so I'm 2 times immigrant, and I'm a registered social worker, and I work for Calgary Immigrant Women Association for 2 programs. I'm an outreach counselor for Chestermere, and I also work at CIWA downtown for Family Conflict Prevention Program.
Thank you for sharing that, Larisa. We hope to really hear a lot about parenting from you and the advice that you have for your clients. IBK, would you want to go next, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is IBK. I'm a communications and marketing professional with a background in broadcast journalist. I'm also a voice actor and a content strategist. I relocated to Canada, precisely Ottawa, in 2022. So I'm still pretty new at this immigration situation. And I founded a page called The Ottawa Mom on Instagram. It has a following of over 6,000 people. And the whole idea of the page was to build a community of people who are trying to navigate what I'm trying to also navigate, and to also show the facts that we are not alone in immigrating. So whether you relocated 20 years ago, 50 years ago, or you're just relocating, we all share this common knowledge of trying to, or common denominator of trying to understand our new environment. So that's who I am. Nice to meet everybody.
We're pleased that you're joining us, and I'm so sure that the experiences that you will share and the tips you have as a newcomer mom yourself will resonate with our viewers and those watching this session later. Valerie, last but not least, if you could tell us a little about yourself, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Valerie Williams. I am a trained child and youth worker, but currently I work as a parent educator with the Family Education Center of Peel. And that is an agency that serves all of Peel, Caledon, Mississauga, and Brampton. And it helps parents who are raising children between the ages of 0 to 18 years old. I would encourage everyone to please get on their website, regardless of where you are. You can still participate in some of the courses and some of the training, because quite a bit of what they do is virtual, so online. So please get online. I was born in Jamaica. I currently reside in Canada for many years. So I won't exactly go into details about that. Yes, and so that's my background, a little bit about me.
It's great to hear that we have 3 different panelists with varying years of experience in Canada. So we know that there's going to be lots of amazing advice. Like I mentioned earlier, this session is all about parenting in Canada. And something that I'd like to start with is, as immigrants, when we move from different parts of the world, our journeys could look very different, and especially parenting. could look very different in terms of the norms, in terms of the culture we were born in or we raise our children in, and that could be very different in Canada. As an immigrant yourself, there's a whole journey that you have to navigate of learning the new culture, of understanding how things function. While with that, you also are a parent and trying to understand that for yourself and your children. So the goal here today is to understand first the cultural context and how it varies in Canada as opposed to where you moved from. And also then what would be the rights that you need to be aware of, and how can you raise responsible, resilient children in Canada and be a part of the society and contribute as well. So I think, Valerie, I'll get started with you for this. If you could share a little bit with us in terms of the cultural context, how things are different in Canada, what would be some things that one should be aware of when moving here that mostly look different for your clients, as something that you might share with them?
Yes, thank you. Depending on where you're from in the world, as you've indicated, we're from all different parts of the world. And yes, parenting does look very different here. In Canada, most of us, I'll use myself as an example, my background being West Indian, I was raised with a pretty authoritarian background. That is where the parents are in charge and they pretty much tell you what to do and you do it. Whereas in Canada, for the most part, and certainly with the Family Education Center, what we do is we use a more democratic approach. And in that, that's where parents and children can discuss things. They can agree on certain things. Of course, parents are fairly in charge, but they defer to their children a lot in terms of goal setting, in terms of problem solving, particularly problem solving. If there is a problem, rather than the parent solving it and then telling the child what the solution is, they will often help the child, have the child be a part of the solution. And that is one of the main focus of the democratic parenting style. And I personally appreciate that as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Larisa, I'll come to you next. If you could take us through some of the children's rights as well. It's important to know that in Canada, because as however a parent might decide to raise their child, it's important for both parents and children to be aware of their rights so that they can develop and they can have the best experience here in Canada, and they can be more socially aware and have a good experience overall. If you could share that with us, please.
Oh, absolutely. So here in Canada, children's rights in Alberta specifically are governed by national laws, provincial legislation, and international agreements. The first right would be its right to protection. So children must be protected from exploitation and abuse, which means physical punishment is prohibited. So in some culture, maybe some parents are using physical punishment to discipline kids, and here in Canada they right away find out that this is not right to do it. So in Canada it's prohibited. Another thing I would say that children have can express their views on matters that affect them, so they have right to participation, so they can participate in family courts, for example, if there's custody question, so children can have a right to decide who they want to stay with. And then right to provision. Children have access to basic needs like education, healthcare, a right to employment starting 12 years old. Children can start working a little bit, for example, babysitting jobs, but before that, they don't have the right to do it. Thank you.
And to playtime as well, for an overall holistic kind of growth. IBK, similar questions as what I asked Valerie and Larisa earlier, but also as you're a newcomer mom yourself, if you could bring in your experience when you moved to Canada, how different was it here for you? And was it hard kind of understanding the norms here, or like, did you have to tweak your parenting style?
When you say was it, has it is still hard. It is still very hard for me right now to understand, because when Larisa was talking, I was like, interesting. I might have been doing this wrong the whole time. But what I mean is, so where I come from, I'm from Nigeria. Where I come from, we're going to scold the kids when they do something wrong. We're going to punish them. We're going to tell them to kneel down, raise up their hands, and close their eyes. I mean, we're even going to, discipline them, so that they learn. That's how I was brought up. That's how most of us have been brought up. However, when we relocated to Canada, the first thing they told us was, you don't hit kids here. Make sure you don't hit your kids. And for me, that was like, oh, really? So if I tell them, I have 2 boys, and boys can be, you have to speak more than 4 times or 5 times before they understand what you're trying to say or probably do what you want them to do. Mm-hmm. So it's been a hard adjustment for me to say to them, Larisa said, or rather Valerie said, where it's more of a, how did she put it, democratic conversation. So yeah, like, do you hear me? Do you think it's okay? That's hard for me. Where I come from, it's what I say goes. That's it, so it's harder, but I know I've been with time. I mean, I've been here now 3 years. So with time, I've been learning to, because when you're in Rome, you have to act like the Romans. So I've been learning to speak to them, have a conversation with them, say to them, do you want to go out on a walk? Do you know what, that's a hard adjustment for me. In Nigeria, it's if you don't, you're not going. You are not, it's just, that's it.
So in Canada, what I'm hearing is it's more of a gentle parenting kind of style as opposed to what we as immigrants may be used to. And all 3 of you brought up some great points for viewers to understand what those cultural differences may look like. We spoke a little bit about discipline, but in terms of socialization, because Canada is a multicultural place, as a country, it's diverse. We aim to be as inclusive as possible. As immigrants, as residents, and also for our children, we would want to raise them the same way as well. So talking a little bit about socialization and understanding maybe societal structure or family structure, which could look very different in different families. Let's dive into that a little, because that also has somewhat of a cultural connection. And there's probably a learning for newcomer parents in that regard as well. Valerie, could I come to you for this, please? Yeah.
Something I'd like to add to the previous question is about the Children's Aid Society. And particularly in Ontario, there is an agency, and what they are required to do, I know there's something similar in Ottawa as well, actually, in Calgary, I should say. Parents, all adults, teachers particularly, are required to report to the Children's Aid Society if any child does appear to be neglected, sexually molested, or physically abused. Those are 3 particular areas. So this is one thing I usually remind or inform immigrant parents to be very careful with their children, because child under 16 years of age can be what they call apprehended or taken into the care of the Children's Aid Society, which is very surprising to a lot of parents. I know IBK was saying where she comes from and where I come from and where a lot of other people come from. You don't expect that to happen, but I'd like to alert parents that in Canada, that is the law. And if anybody suspects your child is being abused, they will report. They have an obligation to report to the Children's Aid Society, and then they have an obligation to investigate the cases individually. So I wanted to point that out. So,
and with that, there's something that I wanted to kind of bring in as well. I had a chat with you earlier where you mentioned that in these cases, it's important for both children and parents to understand how serious this can be. Any negligence on the parent's part could result in the child being taken away. At the same time, it's also child's responsibility to understand what's real versus, what they're imagining to be abuse from the parents. Sometimes in schools, as hanging out with their peers, they might have a different understanding of it. And therefore, as parents, it's important to have those conversations with your children before they're of an age wherein they hang out in, or they're attending daycares and, in schools. So they have a very good understanding of if they have any allegations, if those are true as well. That's just something that I wanted to kind of highlight here, that it goes both ways. But coming back to the point around socialization, just understanding what family structures could look like. Valerie, is there something you could quickly add?
Socialization is also a little bit different in Canada than around the world. Parents tend to want to be more involved with their children anyways. You do things with them. You take them to their events. And you, for the most part, I have two sons, and I know when they played sports when they were younger, their father and I, we would take them to their sporting activities and we would remain with them until the end of it. So we got really involved and really caught up in all of that. And I view that as part of the socialization and part of the expectations that society in Canada has of parents as they become involved in their children's lives. I could go on a little bit further and talk about socialization between young men and young women. I don't know if you want me to delve into that.
Maybe that could be a conversation slightly deeper into this discussion, or if there's a specific link, you're also free to share it in the chat here, or if there's a resource you'd like to share with us later, we can share it with everyone who registered for this session and the viewers later as well. But continuing this chat, I wanted to come to IBK to learn a little bit about, as an immigrant yourself, there's so much, as I mentioned earlier, to learn and unlearn in Canada. And as you're raising children, it could also be isolating sometimes, or there could be a fear of judgment from other parents of, are you getting it right? Are you doing everything correctly or not? Was that the case for you? Is there anything? I see you smiling, so it looks like maybe I'm hitting the right spot here.
Well, it is the case. It is, because like I made you know, I'm 3 years in, right? So there's a lot of adjustments. And as we were having a conversation earlier, I told you that my quote, and if you go on my page, you hear me say, the illiterate of the 21st century is not someone who can learn or write, is someone who can unlearn, relearn, and learn, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of unlearning going into being an immigrant here, especially in Canada. It's a lot of unlearning process, knowing that, oh, you can't do this, this is how it's done here. So for instance, where I come from, it's if you want to go to the market, the mother goes alone, right? Mm-hmm. We go get what we need for the family and we come back. So we have family around that we can leave our kids with, or we just do things alone. But here in Canada, speaking of socialization, we have to take the kids along because there's no one to leave them home with. So that's how the kids are already going to the grocery store with the parents. They already know how it works, what kind of grocery stores are available in your community, in your area. And that's also a part of socialization. And as Valerie mentioned, sporting activities. Where I come from, by the way, I'm still pretty much new here in Canada, so I'm relating to where I come from a lot. It's drop your kids off, pick them up. That's how it works. But here, that's not how it works. You have to stay with them, you have to support them, you have to cheer for them, and then you have to take them back home. So you're very involved. So you know that if you're going to register your kids up for basketball or piano lessons or what have you, you know that you're going to be involved in that lesson as well. So do you have the time to be involved? So these are the things that you have to check before you can register your kids. And that's like my own idea of the socialization so far with me.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And, as we're discussing like what the rights could be, Larisa, I'm coming to you right away with if you have something to add to this, as well as, if you could dive into a little bit about children's challenges as well. We're talking about, as parents, what would be some common challenges or what would be roadblocks or learnings that we need to be aware of. But for a child as well, it's a new environment. If a child born here, it could look slightly different because they have a little more acclimatization. They grow up in this culture. But for those who have moved and kind of seen this immigration experience firsthand, it could take a while for them to kind of get used to the space and integrate more smoothly. So kind of two questions for you, something that you wanted to add first.
All right, so I will add for the previous question and then I'll jump to another question. For the previous questions about what to do, just do not feel isolated, I would highly recommend from my working experience and my personal experience to start volunteering. Volunteering at school, volunteering in the community, as a parent, coach in a soccer, basketball, something just to get know the Canadian life and do not feel isolated. It helps with language training. It helps with communication style. It helps with understanding of the culture. And also, play dates are very important for children. When you just invite some children, neighbors over, or you going out and you talk to your neighbors, this is the important point I wanted to add.
And if I may jump in as well, there's something that a friend of mine had shared, that, how it's important for when you have play dates for your children, it's also an opportunity for newcomer parents to make that community for themselves, to network, find other parents who probably in the future could be your job connections, could help you find another opportunity. So there's networking and volunteering kind of go hand in hand in Canada. And there's a lot of benefit as you're doing this for your child that comes in helps you as well. Valerie, I see that you wanted to add
Yes,
something.
I did want to add to help with the isolation or to help to prevent it, developing a village. It's an African proverb that IBK probably knows quite well. It takes a village to raise a child. And I like to say it takes a village to raise a family, because sometimes everyone in the family needs a little bit of help. So having that village of people that you can count on, whether it's through somebody to look after your kids when you go out for a little bit, or just as Larisa said, bring the kids over for a play date, and then the parents can get to know each other a little bit better and socialize a little. Isolation is a thing in Canada, also because of the kind of weather we have. Winter times, we're mostly indoors, and so it is hard to always be out and about. And I think that can create some isolation, particularly for new immigrants.
Now let's dive into this other conversation that we wanted to have a little about, adaptation. What can that look like in terms of challenges and your tips for kids and your children to be adapting to this new life in Canada, and how parents can help them do that. Larisa, I think I'll come back very quickly to you for a quick tip and then go to IBK for this.
Well, yes. Well, the challenges that kids can experience in, well, for example, when they go to school or when they go to daycare, it might be different routine. It might be different assignments at school, a different school system, and the way how teacher communicate with children. For example, from my home country, it's a different. That's so different from, for example, right now I'm experiencing when my child is in school. Instead of homework, they doing some projects, research, and I don't have any idea what it is about, still living here for 17 years. So kids can have challenges with adapting to, new food. That's as different. They can have challenges adapting to the way how people dress up. In some schools, we don't have a uniform, so children can dress up differently. And then, so I guess that the way how to adapt it would be helpful to go to some events, community events, would be helpful to take them to library events. And of course, Newcomer Center, they have a lot of different activities for children. And yes, just go outside and speak to the parents. And of course, and remember that for children is a shock and as well. So once they move to different environment, it's something to learn. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is, it could be groups as well. It could be like what IBK has here. It could be a social group. It could be a page, a forum that you could be part of, or go to external events. But seek the support as immigrants, even if we don't have that family structure, that family support here that we had in other countries that we moved from. You can still create that village that Valerie mentioned earlier with your friends and the new friends that you make, or other support that is available that you can create for yourself, or also available by the government in terms of services and settlement agencies and organizations that can support you. It just so happened that I kind of noticed that we're all women here, but to highlight that parenting is not a gender specific role in Canada. So let's also kind of touch upon that very briefly, that it's hands-on for whatever the family structure looks like, if it's to moms, to dads, a mom and a dad, however it might look, but it's for everyone involved to be hands-on with parenting. Would someone want to add something there?
Well, I can add it. Yes, so in Canada, and specifically if parents are divorced and they have 50-50 custody, that means 50-50. So 50% of the time that is spent with the child, or one parent spending, better say, and then 50% of the time another parent spending with the child. And even if the family is not divorced, both parents have the same 50-50 rule to get involved in the children's life, when it's very, very different from other countries, specifically like from Russia, where I came from, when mom is usually doing everything with children. No, here in Canada, 50-50. And well, yeah, and of course, since we have same-sex marriages legal in Canada, it's very important, I wanted to say, to explain your children that it can't be that your child would have two moms or two dads, or one mom or one dad, and it's still normal family. Also, I would like to add another point, that here in Canada, we have Indigenous community as well, First Nation community, and they have very different family dynamics. And it is very important to learn about this and see how their families are functioning. And because again, from my personal experience, from my working experience, some people have biases towards them. And the best way is just go and learn. They're very open people.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing that. You earlier, all three of you mentioned some challenges or roadblocks that your child might or could face in as they adapt to a new culture here. Let's maybe go deeper into some specific scenarios that could look very different here. As we mentioned earlier, diversity is huge in Canada. Depending on which part of the country you are living in, it could look slightly different for you. But the bigger cities may just be more multicultural. There's a focus on including everyone, but there's also some ills of the society in the form of racism, discrimination, bullying at school. And it could be very difficult for a child who's trying to make friends, who's trying to adapt to a new environment, to be able to tackle that. So IBK, you, and then maybe I can ask Valerie as well. From IBK, your own perspective, if that's been a conversation that you've ever had with your children in terms of education, or if they came to you with a problem wherein they felt excluded from a group, and how you offer to kind of help them with that.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the adaptation that you mentioned earlier, because I was going to touch on that. It's I hear that kids adapt better than we, the adults, because why, we've had years of a certain kind of awareness, a certain kind of knowledge and culture. And so they have, a couple of years. So they adjust easily. However, the problem might not even be with them adjusting. It might be a 50-50 thing. So how are the Canadians adjusting to them, and how are they adjusting to the Canadians? So let's take, for instance, in terms of food and the winter. Winter is one of the hardest things to adapt to when you come to this country. I've not even adapted. I mean, we're in spring. It looks like spring, but there's still snow. So I don't really know what this is, but I'm still cold. I'm still shivering, and I can't wait for it to end. So I have not adapted. However, my son says to me the other day, I love the winter. And I'm like, you do? Because when we came, he was crying every single day that he just didn't want to put on his gloves or his mittens. He didn't want to wear the extra layers and all that. And now he's telling me he loves the winter because he wants to slide down the heap of snow and things like that. So he is adapted to that. And then in terms of food, there was a period where my second child decided that he wasn't going to eat any meals from me anymore. So at the daycare, then they had a chef, and he was making, of course, Canadian meals, and that was something he was interested in. And I was like, I don't know how to make those kind of meals. That's not something I'm familiar with. Again, adaptability on my part was a bit low, right? But then he came around, and sometime last year he started eating my meals again. So that's good, right? There's a adaptability situation whereby he has come to know that, okay, I can get this in school and I can get this at home. I have a different meal at home. I have a different meal at school. So that's that. Yeah. Now, in terms of school, for my first, when he got to his school, it was hard for him because, and then I did something, that most parents wouldn't want to do. I threw him into an all French school. We don't speak French, but I know that that's something that's going to help him later in the future. And so it was hard for him to communicate. People didn't want to speak to him. He was crying a lot. He was overwhelmed a lot. And I almost caved in. I almost gave up. I was like, I'm going to take him out and put him in like an English school. However, I left him there to see how long before he could adapt. And before you know what's happening, beginning of this year, I took him back. He's already responding to them in French. He's already having friends and things like that. Now, in terms of the bullying, or things like that. As a particular.
And I request you to keep your answer short there, because there's something I wanted to check with Valerie.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the bullying, or because like that's very important. How do they feel? Do they feel excluded? Have I had that conversation with them? I did, because there was a time that he hit a child in school, and we got called to the principal's office. We were spoken to. We were like, tell your child this and that. And there was a time a child bit him, like bit him and left a mark, and we weren't told. Nobody had that conversation with us. So we had to go to the school. We had to tell them that's not a fair treatment. If you're going to call us because our child hit someone, then you have to call us when somebody bites our child, right? And then we had to sit him down to have a conversation with him that person, just the way you hit a kid, it was not deliberate. That person, of course, didn't do this to you deliberately. So it's not a thing of race or what have you, right? So we've had that conversation with him.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for sharing that, and, for kind of getting deep and personal with your experiences, because that's what we like to do with our sessions at Café New Canadians, because so many viewers would probably have the same journey as yours. And at this point, I also want to encourage everyone joining us, wherever, to ask those questions. If you have specific questions and concerns that you want our panelists to answer for you, they may have already expressed and kind of addressed some of your concerns with their experiences, but we still have time for you to send in your questions. And we have received some from people before the session that I will be bringing up soon as well. But we would love your participation. Valerie, something that you wanted to add here, and if you could also very briefly then talk for the viewers who probably have not moved to Canada yet, for them to understand what the school structure looks like in Canada. What options would someone have here as a parent when it comes to schooling?
Yeah, schools are amazing here in Canada. I was going to say Ontario, but in Canada overall, you do get to go to the school that is immediately in your neighborhood. And in Ontario, which is where I can mostly speak from, we have the Catholic boards and we have the public school boards. And you, as I said, you would typically register for the school that is closest to you, which is wonderful, because where I come from in Jamaica, that is not always the case. Sometimes kids are going to schools very far away from home, and they're getting up early and coming home late. But so that's a good thing. Call your school board, whichever one you think you qualify for, and ask them the information you need to bring to register. In school, there are child and youth workers, there are social workers, there are psychologists. In some cases, there are even nurses and chaplains. So in Canada, people go out of their way to make sure that schools are well supported. The other thing I'd like to briefly say is that school and home should be a partnership. Parents, just because you're new, don't shy away from school and from what goes on at school. Go in, introduce yourself to the principal and your child's teacher particularly, and get to know how the system works. It's once you get the hang of it, it's there to support you. In most schools as well, they have parent councils, which parents are invited to be a part of. And so just get as involved as you can with the school system so that you can help your child. Because at the end of the day, parents, you are the best support for your children. You cannot rely on the schools to do it. You have to get to know your children. And the term I actually like to use, you have to be able to get to know your children so you can champion them in the system.
That's so well said. Larisa, please. So help us understand how we can champion children and help them in the system.
So I just wanted to add into the school system as well. Well, we have in Alberta as well, we have the Catholic and the just normal English school system. So it's called Calgary Board of Education and Catholic Board of Education. Also, there is a variety of private schools. There is an option to be homeschooled. Some parents can homeschool children at home. There's a French immersion school, Spanish immersion school, Francophone school. There are some schools that accommodate children with special needs, and special need can vary from disability, learning disability, to intelligence. So children with high IQ here in Calgary, they have a special schools, and that's quite a bit of process, but they have enriched curriculum, and principal, this is something that actually you need to have in your mind. If you feel like your child is talented, gifted, smart, you're supposed to talk to your school teacher, principal, and they're going to guide you through. Or you can also go and find the GATE program. It's called GATE, Gifted and Talented Education. So yeah, so it's very important to keep in mind there's a lot of different ways to teach your kids. Thank
So
you.
what I'm hearing is there's lots of support available. There's lots of
Absolutely.
resources in Canada. It's just at any point as a parent, if you feel alone, always know that there's more out there, people like you who are going through the same process. So reach out, make connections, and reach out to the right organizations who have programs like Valerie and Larisa mentioned earlier, who have support in terms of resources for you. And if you don't have connections, reach out to your local settlement organizations, and they will have referrals for you for those specific programs. For a brief while now, I want to kind of jump into back to parents to understand there's, along with parenting is a full-time job, maybe 24/7. It doesn't leave you with any other time for everything else, but you still have to navigate your life as an immigrant. You have to navigate job search, or you need to navigate settlement and, provide for your kids. How difficult has that been for you, IBK? If you could mention that, and maybe you want to address this question as well. We have a question from Ram, who's joining us on YouTube, and the question is, how do parents find time for themselves when childcare is expensive? Not everyone may have the option for a daycare or childcare option available, and those who are sacrificing their careers or their time to stay at home and provide for their kids and be around for their kids 24/7, it could be difficult for them as well to find time for themselves, for their own entertainment, their own sanity sometimes.
Okay, so in terms of I'm just going to talk about the first thing you touched on, which is how do we as parents navigate our own lives?
Yes.
I'm just very sincere with you. I haven't navigated anything yet because I still have 2 young ones, and so coming here, it was easier when they were in daycare because it was 7:30 to 5:30, right? So you can plan your life around that time, which is usually the work hour time, right? So the work hour time is 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 7 to 3, depending. So you could plan your life. Right now, I have one in elementary. I have one still in daycare. So the elementary one closes at 3 o'clock. I've been on the wait list for after school for the past 2 years, and I haven't gotten a call back. So of course, I can't plan my life like from 7:30 because he goes to school 7:30, comes back at 3 o'clock. And then the other one goes to school at 8:30, comes back at 5 o'clock. So how do I plan my life? That has been an impossible thing for me to do. So I've been the parent who has taken a step back, that I'm going to be here with the kids while my husband goes ahead to do like all that needs to be done, what I can't do, which is work at the moment. And so yeah. I feel at every point in time, parents, when they have that conversation with themselves, they need to know that the 2 people are putting in the work. Some people will think because I'm currently staying at home or I took the backstage, it means that, oh, maybe I don't have much to offer, right? Maybe I'm not. And these are things that I even like had a conversation with myself about. I fought with myself about, because I've always worked. I've worked all my life. This is the first time I'm not working, and it took a toll on me. I mean, there was depression, there was mental health issues. It was a lot for me. And I had to tell myself, what matters to me are my kids, and I'm looking out for them, and I'm doing the best I can for them at the moment, right? And so in terms of, for the other part where you mentioned, like, how do you provide, that's for the question, how do you provide...
how do you find time for yourself as well?
Yes, we can find time for, I'll come back to that, but I'm also trying to, for people who have to work to provide the daycare money.
Yes.
I had a friend who had to, literally, what she was earning was what she was paying for daycare. But you have to also understand, like I said, the kids are all that matter to us at the moment. And you're going to understand that daycare is not forever. Yes, it's going to be for a period that will look like forever, but it's not. After a while, they get to go to elementary school where you don't get to pay. So for that period, are you willing to keep working? And then, sometimes you get some bonuses here and there. So you help yourself out with those bonuses, send them to daycare. And if you can bring a parent over, because we did that at some point, we had to bring a parent over who would stay with the kids so that they didn't have to go to daycare. So these are options that are available. How do you find time for yourself?
You did answer that though.
Yeah. I haven't found the time for myself yet.
We hope you do soon. Larisa, I saw that you wanted to add something earlier.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So you know, again, I'm a parent myself, and my child was born in Canada, but while I'm a parent immigrant who doesn't have any family here and any support, but however, community, neighbors, friends are very helpful. And sometimes I had, calls from people I know saying, "Hey, you can drop off like the child for 2 hours with us if you need something." So people are helpful. Also, in organizations, for example, where I work at CIWA, we have special child care where we provide child minding while mom, for example, goes to the language classes, or mom has an appointment with a settlement counselor, employment counselor. So there's some options available. Please reach out. And again, every single newcomers or settlement organization, they're going to have this information. Just reach out. There's some options available. Thank you.
Valerie,
Yeah,
as you kind of add to
yes,
this, can I also request you to add if there are some resources you'd like to highlight for childcare, daycare, or any resources where people can learn more about the support systems or benefits available?
I wanted to add to the question first, and then I'll get to that. Taking care of self, though, is so critical and so important, and I remind parents of that because if sometimes if you're at home all the time with your children, you can get stressed, you can get depressed, as some parents do, and I think the key to that is finding some time during the day to go for a little walk, to exercise, to do a little bit of stretching, to do something physical for yourself. And I'm not just saying it, I do that for myself as well, because that's what rejuvenates me. And that's how I feel like I'm ready to go on to the next part of the day. Because being home is one thing, but you have to be ready for when the children come home, because then that's a whole nother part of your day. I'm sorry, the other part was
in
about—
terms of resources, is there maybe one or two very briefly that you want to highlight right now?
I want to
or you could
mention—
share with us and we can pass it on to the viewers later.
Sure. One thing I can mention are places of worship. Sorry, I'm Shruti. Places of worship. There might be somebody there who might be able to offer you a couple of hours per week. They may have a program as well where you can go as parents or take your children. Just libraries. Check out all the different resources in your communities. Settlement workers have a wealth of information about what is available. So even if you think you don't necessarily need them for everything, just go and have a meeting and find out what are some of the resources that are available.
The next point that I wanted to kind of bring up is an often asked question that we received, and we've received earlier as well from our viewers and readers, is when we move to Canada or any other country, we come here with savings. There's also a bit of uncertainty in terms of when you would find jobs and when would you be able to kind of start earning here. So there isn't always a lot available in terms of finances for your child's development as well. In Canada, luckily, there's lots of free activities, lots of free resources available, parks, museums, libraries, and so on. So, Valerie, if I could stay with you and something that you want to add here in terms of what else can be done, or if there are resources that we may not be aware of that parents can benefit from knowing.
Definitely, as I mentioned, some of the ones I mentioned before, check with them. The school social worker has a list of things that are available as well. The child and youth worker, anybody within the assistant that you're dealing with, ask them about the different resources that are available. That's about as much as I know currently. Within Ontario, which I know is different from the other provinces, those are some of the ones I would definitely recommend.
Yeah. Larisa, can I come to you with the same question in terms of free activities or resources as we focus on not just the schooling, but for a child's overall development in Canada?
Of course, for example, in Calgary, where I'm residing, we have a fair entry program in city of Calgary, which allowed families, low-income families, to get access to Calgary Zoo, to different leisure centers, to different museums, And yeah, I would agree that libraries always have a lot of information. Community centers, well, sometimes, you know, cultural support, churches, temples, or other religious institutions, they would have different programs. And of course, as I mentioned, Center for Newcomers, CIWA, Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, we all have this information about different programs that people can have access, and it's for free or for very, very small amount of money.
And
Thank
as
you.
Valerie mentioned earlier, that even though the resources that we may have mentioned in this session may be specific to a province, there's always other support available in whichever province you are. A quick tip that I'd also add is for those parents joining us or watching this session later, if you haven't moved to Canada yet and you're in the process of moving soon, there's also a benefit in enrolling for pre-arrival services. You'll find lots of such information on our website, newcanadians.tv. We also have a conference related to that coming up. But the value is in kind of starting to prepare early on, even before you move here, and know that after you move here, there's lots of support available. You just have to reach out to even local libraries. Sometimes will be able to connect you to settlement organizations, and they will refer you to other organizations. So don't feel alone, and there's always help available. I know that we heard from Larisa and Valerie earlier about your specific organizations. IBK, you mentioned earlier you have an Instagram page where you share resources, you pour your heart out and kind of your experience as well. We know why you started it, because you wanted a community, you wanted to share your experiences. If you could tell us a little bit about what kind of content you create and what's the help and benefit that others who join the group will have.
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, the goal of that page was to make people know they were not alone. I realized that whatever it is I'm going through right now, whatever it is I'm talking about with you right now, somebody else is probably going through it, and they just don't know who to talk to or how to, maybe pass along their message or probably get help, right? And that's what you are also trying to do right now. Let people know that there are helps in different areas. So that was why I started the page, to make people know that, okay, if you came to this country 30 years ago, you probably have already built a wealth of knowledge that can help us that are just coming in, right? And if you're coming in, these are the things to note. So I share tips, I share hacks. Like I used to say to people, this is where you can get things all at once. You could go to Value Village if you're just coming in, you can't afford the $200 jacket. You can get a nice jacket in Value Village for $70 or for $50, at least to keep you warm through the first winter. And then after that, maybe you get a good job, you can afford like the other brands, the great brands, the ones that would keep you really warm. And then also in terms of shoes, in terms of like household things, you can go to Dollar Tree as opposed to Dollarama, things like that. So I share tips, I share hacks, I share emotional. So I let people know, like entrepreneurs, there's a post I made, and I told entrepreneurs it's difficult coming here and starting over and trying to run a business, because of course the way you run a business back at home will be different from the way you run a business here in Canada. So I just want you to know that you're not alone. Some things take time, but then if you just probably try and learn under somebody, volunteer, as Larisa mentioned, if you can do things like that, you will definitely get a hold of the craft again. That's if you really want to do. But I've come to find out that another thing Canada does, it opens your mind. So things that you didn't know, or you thought you couldn't do, by the time you're like, what can I do? I've been staying here looking for a job. I can't get a job in this aspect. What about if I do this? So Canada sort of opens your mind to new things. And then, Shruti, just to mention, for the person who said, when you come in with savings, sometimes your savings is drying out and you don't have like options and things to do. We're with you. We know what it means like for your savings to be, going down and you haven't got that job. Like Larisa said, please volunteer. Volunteering is like when you meet people, it opens doors. So for instance, if you can volunteer in your local library, so you can take your kids there if you have kids. So while they're there with the books, you're also volunteering. So it's like a win-win, right? And then other things like that probably would give room, hopefully, for you to be able to get a great job at the end of the day.
Thank you to all three of you for sharing these wonderful tips there. Another question we received earlier was, most times as immigrant parents, it could be hard to have some tough conversations or prepare your children for different stages of their life in Canada. Some conversations that they in other countries thought there's way too many years still to have, but here in terms of just how culturally different Canada is, you need to be prepared so your child understands societal structures, understands what their friends are up to, understands how to kind of distinguish between the right and wrong as well. What would your tip be? Valerie, I'll come to you and then Larisa next. In terms of your interactions with your clients, what is that one tip that you have to have tough conversations with your kids?
Start the conversations early. Communicate with your children early, regardless of ages, regardless of topic, because the more you talk to them, the easier it will be to raise and deal with the difficult topics. Mm-hmm. So communicate.
And if I may add a point for you, Valerie, as well, is I know when we mentioned children, IBK mentioned earlier that she has 2 young ones, but there's also people who moved with their children. Those children are now in their teens. They might start to date here in Canada, and that could look different. Parents might be worried about that, what the structure looks like here. Is there any other tip that you have for conversations with teens as well and understanding their point of view as well?
Yes, and communication doesn't always, it might mean sitting with your teen and playing a game. Mm-hmm. Teens like to spend a lot of time in their rooms. They like to naturally isolate themselves. So I usually encourage parents to knock on the door, invite yourself in when possible, go in, sit down and talk to them. But I also encourage parents to listen more than they talk, because sometimes kids have a lot to say, but if you don't give them the okay to say it, they might not be able to say it. When you're tucking kids in at nighttime, I find with my sons anyway, nighttime was the time I got them to talk the most. Of course, they didn't want to go to sleep, so they used that as a strategy. But it's okay. Give them the extra 10, 15 minutes to listen to them and to hear what they have to say. So yeah, definitely talk to your teens. And teens will talk when they're doing chores, when you're going for a ride with them, taking them to school, picking them up from their activities. Just try to engage them as much as possible and hear from them as well.
Thank you. Larisa, I'll just add another layer for you. How can one maintain healthy boundaries within the house, while also for both parents and children, especially children in this case, while also creating a safe space within one's household for your children to trust you and come to you when they're actually in some tough situation that you can help them handle?
So I would suggest, again, as Valerie mentioned, communication is a key, of course. And our parents, newcomer parents, they often they are in survival mode. Then they have so many things to take care about. And so I would say, even if you don't have a lot of time, you can repeat one subject several times. So just your child will learn, or the teenager will learn something from you, will hear something from you. If today he doesn't hear anything, he will hear at least tomorrow. Another good tip that I always say, teach your kids to say no, respect them when they say no, so that how they are going to protect themselves in the future, and that they will learn how to put healthy boundaries. There's a lot of resources at school, of course, they're learning. And at school, the teachers are very helpful against bullying, against some discriminations, of course. They're very helpful, what I found. And yeah, so just communicate whenever you have time. Have a dinner conversation. Have some activities in your spare time on the weekends, something, and go out. Please go out. Don't stay home because it feels very isolated. I understand, specifically winter, I understand how it feels. Believe me or not, I was born in Russia, but I was living in Argentina, and that was very hot, and I'm still accommodating. I'm still adjusting to the cold weather in Canada, even living here for 17 years. So, but there's a lot of indoor activities in the winter time, and just
that
try something.
Both
And
parents
of course,
and children with their mental health as well, to tackle
exactly.
all
And don't
seasons.
be hard on yourself as a parent. You're doing whatever you can. If today you don't have a time to speak with child, speak tomorrow. that's the tips only.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We have another 5 minutes left before we wrap up this session. I wanted to give IBK a chance as well. If there's something that you wanted to add to this chat about our conversations, any quick anecdote, very briefly, if you'd like to add something here.
Right. So very briefly, I just want to say, always believe your child, but always ask questions from other people. So your child's friends, because your child is different around his friends or their friends. So talk to your child's friends. Oh, what did he do? Right? Believe your child, but hear. And then I interact with the bus drivers as well and their teachers and the principal. I interact with, like in the religious setting, because I go to church, I interact with their teachers. I want to know how or what their behavior is like around these people, right? And then I put all of that together in to help me form what I'm going to say to them, how I'm going to talk to them, or when I'm listening to their feedback, how I can help them out. So that's basically what I want to say. Believe your child, because that is your child, but always ask questions from other people as well to help you know how to have a conversation with your child.
That's a great tip. Thank you for adding that. Let's take a very quick question as well from the audience. There's a question we received on YouTube, which is about, in the current scenario in Canada, there's oftentimes that when navigating the healthcare system, if someone isn't able to register with a family doctor due to lack of availability as a newcomer parent, we know that there's also community health centers that are available. Valerie, could you very quickly help our viewers understand how they can access that?
Well, everyone should have an OHIP card in Ontario, and every other provinces you do have access to free healthcare. And so,
but if one isn't able to register with their family doctor, there are other centers, walk-in clinics as well that they could
There are walk-in
access.
clinics. There's the hospital that you perhaps wouldn't want to use, except in real dire emergencies. But yeah, those walk-in clinics are excellent, and they're all over the place. And oftentimes there's a cultural representation in those centers that you may not necessarily get in, say, a hospital. So yeah, check those out.
Sure. IBK, that would be your anything you'd like to add, and also a quick tip, your last tip that you can share with the viewers, and then I'll wrap up with Larisa and Valerie.
Right. So I wanted to say that for the healthcare system, if you come in as a dependent visitor, if you're not a PR or if you're a student, it's not really free. The health centers, the clinics, the walk-ins are not free. So most times just go to the ER if you can't afford. So the one thing you'll be paying for are the drugs. But if you go into walk-in, you'll be paying for consultancy, paying for other things. But if you go to the ER, regardless of how trivial it is, yes, you might wait 4 hours, but regardless, if you go to the ER, at least you've saved some couple of bucks that you would use to get the medication, right? So that's what
a great tip there
for people who don't have the OIP or have other means.
Thank you. Now, in just 10 seconds, if there's a message you have, your last words to the audience, just to wrap up the tips that we've shared here. Sorry?
Be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can as a person, as a parent, and even your children are also doing the best that they can, right? So give yourself some grace. I'm giving myself some grace, right? It's not easy. Nobody said it was easy, because adjusting isn't easy, but just be kind to yourself. You're doing the best.
So right there. Nobody said immigration as well is such a huge task that we've all taken upon ourselves, and navigating it is a constant process. Thank you all of you for joining us. One quick tip from Larisa and Valerie as well, just to kind of summarize how we can raise responsible, resilient children. In 20 seconds, Larisa, if very quickly could share something.
Okay, I'll just add that you would have to keep communication open with your kids, and you're supposed to be available for them whenever they need you, because you are the main resource for your kids, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And Valerie, if you could close the session for us.
I'm sorry. I definitely would encourage parents to be a champion for their children. Get to know them well enough so that you can champion them. That would be my final tip.
Wonderful. I think on behalf of all our viewers as well, I see some messages here where Carol is thanking everyone for the wonderful conversation you've had. You've shared your personal experiences, lots of tips and resources that we can also share with viewers later. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the audience as well. This was a session of Café New Canadians that is brought to you by New Canadians TV Network. We are an information hub for newcomers to Canada. Those of you who are here, those of you who are moving to Canada soon, we have lots of resources for you on our website, on our YouTube channel. And before that, let me just remind you for the organizations that our panelists were representing, and for IBK's page as well, you have the details on your screen. So we'd encourage you to connect with them, access the resources. And for us, you could stay connected with us as well at New Canadians. There are lots of different ways. You could watch us on TV. In Canada, we have a TV show that airs on Omni Television. You could check our content out on our website, on our YouTube channel, as well as if you see the QR code on the screen, when you scan that, you should be able to also sign up for our newsletter. We also have a social presence across platforms and would welcome to hear from you, tag us in your journeys, and we're always here to support you with more sessions of Café and as well as other resources across the platforms. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We'll see you in the next session.